Half the world was preoccupied by the latest media-driven global crisis. The other half couldn't be bothered. They were too jaded to give a shit. They heard it all before, or at least they thought they had. The many souls, long drained of hope, those remained indifferent. Well, they believed that they had already heard the screams. The screams of despair. Outbreaks of a spontaneous gangrene-like condition was the first legitimate contender for a genuine crisis of global proportions, of a true global catastrophe. It was a goddamn descent straight into the mouth of the abyss. Some kind of apocalyptic Old Testament of biblical proportions kind of shit. On a scale that the world had never seen. A dance, perhaps the last dance, orchestrated by sinister forces. Deep within the shadowy bowels of existence, they swim into the abyss where the very essence of darkness congealed. They tango with oblivion, a symphony of despair, where the world quivers in the clutches of an unseen sinister embrace of an ultimate evil. There was no cure, no hope. There was no salvation. Death was the only outcome. The medical community, like deranged butchers, experimented with gruesome piecemeal amputations. But as with any flesh-eating demon in the body, deciding how much flesh to cut away was a tormenting riddle. If they didn't remove enough healthy flesh beyond the visible rot, then the irreversible infection would spread like wildfire. And it always did. In the end, contracting the disease sentenced one to a prolonged, excruciating death. There were no exceptions. Every day, hundreds of thousands of tormented souls find themselves in the nightmarish grip of a chilling revelation. The horror of uttering those unsettling words. Their voices trembling, whispering in hushed tones. This is R.O.T. I have the R.O.T. I can't. While others, nothing but crying screams of anguish and despair. others more accepting to their fate. Son of a bitch. I've got the goddamn rot. This relentless fucker showed no mercy. Not to the poor. Not even the wealthy. R.O.T didn't discriminate. As it rode through the world, donning its black mask of death, as the screams of humanity just watched helplessly, as the plague, as it galloped atop its horse, hog-tying every restless soul to its rope of death, dragging their asses through the sands of shit, piss, and decay, till no flesh remained on their measly little bones. As quarantine proved futile, antibiotics and powerful drugs were worthless. The term rate of termination was applied to the merciless speed at which it claimed its victims, but its semi-clever acronym became the macabre slang term, whispering in the dark corners of despair. In the days before the R.O.T outbreak, witnessing an amputee was a rarity. In just a few short months, the opposite held true. The ground and sidewalks became littered with flies as they were freshly painted, and vile remnants of vomit, puddles of blood and shit mixed with maggots and discarded limbs. But it was the relentless hunger, the hunger of this demon plague, that shattered all hope. It wasn't possible to surgically excise the decaying horrors buried deep within the body, near vital organs. The venomous infection coursed through the victim's veins, sealing their fate. Those unfortunate souls with R.O.T had no escape. Only a slow, wretched death as their untreated wounds festered away. In this nightmare, only doctors, scientists, and undertakers thrived. Regardless, though, no one was immune in the end. Humanity was condemned. A shadow of doom haunted everyone's bloodshot eyes. City streets transformed into wandering graveyards. You were either a victim of R.O.T, or you knew someone already tainted. The putrid sores and the stench of unchecked illnesses had a chilling effect on anyone attempting to feign positivity in the face of this ultimate pandemic. Was it airborne? Was it insidious poisons lurking in and out of our food supply? For all anyone knew, it was the wrath of a vengeful deity, the aggressive removal of rotting flesh with surgical scalpels, brought only a temporary respite. Still, it seemed preferable to most victims to endure the agony for another day, even if it meant losing limbs and other treasured appendages. Strangely, funerals for the living became a gruesome social ritual. The rapid descent into a coma prevented many from finding closure for themselves, or their loved ones for that matter. In the face of such grotesque uncertainty, those not yet afflicted held mock funerals, a dark theater of the absurd, while they could still participate in the morbid ceremony. The ghastly portrayals of zombie outbreaks in movies and television were eclipsed by the horrifying reality that unfolded on every street corner.
We believe this so-called rate of termination disease is an unholy fusion of nature and hell itself.
The scientists confessed, their voices trembling in the presence of unspeakable evil.
Our research has eliminated the influence of man-made pathogens and other known toxic agents. But our progress has been halted. There is no way out.
The chairman's patience crumbled, and his anger burst forth like a raging inferno.
Just how is R.O.T connected to the environment, Doctor? Do you have a solution in the works? A vaccine? Anything, Doctor? Tens of millions of people are dying every goddamn day. Meanwhile, it sounds like you and your merry little band of researchers are locked away in a cozy laboratory, sipping your white wines and examining cool specimens under a microscope. Look, we need answers. We need correct answers and solutions. Now, Doctor, not your working theories. The human race does not have the luxury right now of disconnected scientists doing endless critical trials and peer reviews. So solve this thing, Doctor. Solve this thing.
The chairman was beyond angry. He'd lost people, loved ones, and friends, slowly rotted away helplessly, while nothing could be done. Echoed the same primal fear and frustrations felt by billions of others. The restless world waited for any sign of daylight within the lingering darkness. They needed to hear hope for a change, unparalleled desperation. Didn't say please. It shouted from the rooftop and used two clenched fists to demand immediate action. Civility and patience was long gone. The chairman's furious outbursts mirrored the primal fear and frustration of billions. While the normal reaction to that level of venomous sarcasm would have been to punch back, the doctor in the hot seat resisted retaliation. More than anyone, he personally understood the tremendous frustration gripping the world by its throat. The world was shrouded in darkness. It yearned for a glimmer of hope. Even as the abyss threatened to engulf them, the doctor, knowing that his end loomed near, stood up and revealed his own advanced infection, the embodiment of savage horror. It was clear he had not been sipping wine in a comfortable lab as R.O.T devoured his very being, eating a hole through his abdomen.
Mr. Chairman, I love my life, and I love my fellow man. I had hoped to conquer this abomination, truly, and end the torment and death it sowed by solving this horrible plague, and bring closure to the suffering and death it's caused for so many. I haven't taken it lightly, Mr. Chairman. My research team and I worked tirelessly around the clock to synthesize a cure, but it was way too elusive, I'm afraid. My time, Mr. Chairman, is nigh now, as it is for many of my staff, members, and potential successors. Even if we devise a tenable plan tomorrow, it wouldn't save my life, or potentially anyone else already afflicted by the disease. Necrosis this depth is irreversible. It's insidious, pervasive, and already lying dormant in the bloodstream of the rest of the unsuspecting population of Earth.
The chairman's anger dissolved into a wellspring of pity for himself and for the damned human race. Even the world's best and brightest and finest minds had been brought to their knees. There was little time left, and in the heart of the greatest crisis humanity had ever faced, this brilliant scientist, who so many were counting and truly depending on, could not even save himself. In his heart and in his mind, he had held them up as their last hope. Now, they had nowhere left to turn, no escape from the abyss. Unfortunately, they were candidly admitting how out of the league they were in finding a cure. It was as sobering as it was gut-wrenching.
My apologies, sir,
the chairman whispered, his voice heavy with despair. I was out of line with all of that. I'm just consumed. I'm consumed by frustration. I assume you've shared your research data with the appropriate agencies and chosen a successor to take your place after you are no longer able to perform your duties. Is there anything at all you would recommend everyone do? With great pain, the diseased doctor leaned forward to address the microphone with a chilling intensity. If you have any means to escape this dying, disease-infested world, do so immediately. Do it now. Do it now. Because the only ones that are safe, the only humans without any threat, and far, far away from any real danger at this very moment, are the astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the space station orbiting the Earth. They remain untouched by the plague until they descend back into the doomed biosphere. But the chairman stammered. Wait. I thought you said everyone is already a carrier of the R.O.T plague. Wouldn't they already have it in their system, too? The doctor's response was laden with a malevolence that transcended mortal understanding. No. They aren't infected, Mr. Chairman. No, sir, they are not. I just wasn't prepared to reveal the full truth just yet. But at this point, I don't see why it really matters. Anyway, I'll be dead soon enough, as so will everyone else. Hope is loss for our species. There is no stopping this thing from rendering the extinction of mankind. The shocking fact that we have recently uncovered should be revealed, so the human race will know who its killer actually was. Even though there is no escaping the relentless eternal grip of this dark abomination and the sinister, monstrous secrets we have recently uncovered in our human trials. I will it to be that mankind knows its murderer. Its murderer is none other than Mother Nature herself. The chairman looked on in confusion and grave discomfort. There was no choice but to wait impatiently for him to unveil whatever monumental monster is secret he was hiding. The chairman's heart pounded with a mixture of dread and disbelief as the revelation of an unrelenting darkness plunged humanity into the abyss where there was no dawn, no escape from the ungodly, demonic plague that had engulfed them all. The chairman's voice trembled as he tried to grasp the horrifying reality, shaking his head in disbelief. Mother Nature, our executioner. But why? Why has this happened? What is this nightmare? And what have we done to deserve it? As I said earlier, that we believe it's the environment causing this disease to manifest itself in our fragile bodies. That was technically true, but I was being obtuse and deliberately vague. Now let me be a lot more specific and literal. It is Mother Nature killing us, plain and simple. You see, R.O.T is a complex planetary defense mechanism levied against humanity. There is no stopping it. We are the disease. As far as she is concerned, Mother Nature has figured out how to rid herself of her greatest abuser. If we were to relocate to the moon, colonize Mars, or permanently remain in orbit within the International Space Station, then we wouldn't develop this neurotic plague, since we can't live anywhere else. We are doomed. At least that is what is thought to be. However, the doctor, his body, a grotesque canvas of rot and decay, leaned closer, his eyes gleaming with an eerie, otherworldly knowledge. There's more. Much more you need to know. Our entire world that is crumbling is not just because of R.O.T. You see, we have found something else that lies in the heart and womb of countless hours of research into this plague. It's our cells. Our cells, they're mutating. They're all changing. Our human cells are changing as we speak. The doctor started to weaken, his words becoming more faint than the next.
It's all of a part of her grand...
Doctor?
her grand design to give birth to a new species.
The chairman frozen with absolute fear and confusion. The doctor's agony reached its horrifying zenith as he viciously clawed at his own abdomen, unleashing a nightmarish guttural scream that appeared to seep into the very walls, casting an oppressive bone-chilling terror throughout the room. In a convulsive fit, he violently retched, expelling a grotesque crimson torrent of blood. The thick, dark vial, red fluid oozed and gushed, ceaselessly, streaming and pouring relentlessly from each and every orifice, every viscous substance covering the floor, like a scene straight from the darkest of nightmares. The doctor laid sprawled, a wretched, contorted figure, convulsing violently, as if in the throes of an unholy possession. His eyes flickered and danced wildly into the back of his head, rolling like marbles lost in a sea of torment. With each convulsion, he sank deeper into a gruesome pool of his own blood, a vile and unending descent into the abyss of his own demise. And in the midst of this grotesque display, writhing, wiggling maggots began to emerge from his torn flesh simultaneously as he gasped for air. Maggots spilled forth from his mouth, a horrific symphony of decay and despair. His eyes rolled back into the abyss as he crumbled into a gruesome pool of his own life fluid, surrounded by a grotesque infestation. It was as if the very forces of nature had turned against him, sealing his fate in a nightmarish symphony of death and decay. The onlookers in the room, horrified, could bear no more. Disbelief, disgust, and panic overtook them as they scattered in a frenzied rush to escape the horrific scene. Their footsteps echoing with terror leaving the doctor to his gruesome fate. In a room now filled with a chilling emptiness. In the aftermath, only the chairman remained, aghast and paralyzed in his seat. His features contorted with shock and revulsion. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the nightmarish spectacle that had unfolded before him. A horrified witness to the unspeakable horror that had consumed the room. Trapped in a twisted nightmare from which he couldn't escape. The lights in the room flickered, casting eerie, elongated shadows across the walls. The ground beneath them seemed to quake, and a deafening rumble echoed through the building. The chairman, in a frenzy of fear, could feel the very fabric of reality unraveling with a voice that sent chills down the chairman's spine. The doctor, hidden from sight, continued. Mother Nature's wrath knows no bounds. Rot is just the beginning to the true horror that awaits. The lights went out completely, plunging them into pitch darkness. A cold wind swept through the room, carrying with it the heavy stench of decay. In the blackness, the chairman heard an unnerving sound, like the distant wails of the damned. He could no longer see the doctor, but he heard the guttering growling of something unnaturally lurking nearby. Humanity. The doctor's voice, in a ghostly whisper from the void. The rebirth has begun. Suddenly, like an earthquake, the ground cracked open. The chairman panicked, shouting frantically, "What is this madness?" Overwhelmed by sheer darkness and despair that enveloped him. What is this? And then something sinister occurred. Emerging from the shadows and darkness, within the depths of the abyss, souls who had succumbed to the rot plague began to crawl out from beneath. Holes and cracks in the ground. The lights violently began to flicker, on and off, revealing a chilling, unsettling glimpse of pure horror, of their warped figures, their skin ashen and covered in a grotesque lattice of scales, bore the mark of a malevolent curse that defied the very laws of nature. These scales, like the ancient armor of a demonic creature, oozed a sinister aura, as though the very essence of darkness itself had seeped into their pores. Their eyes were far from hollow. They were filled with an unsettling darkness that seemed to pull you in, as if peering into them meant surrendering your very soul to the void. The irises were like swirling vortexes of torment, and the pupils were endless pits of despair, promising an eternity of anguish for anyone who dared to meet their gaze. Their limbs, once human, had been subjected to unimaginable torment, twisted into nightmarish configurations that defied reason and sanity. Each limb appeared to be a blasphemous mockery of the human anatomy, as though they had been reshaped by the cruel hands of otherworldly entities. Each joint bent in directions that should have been impossible, and their movements were a grotesque dance of suffering. They were not just truly alive, they were an abomination against life itself. Their existence was an insult to the natural order. An overwhelming dread consumed all who encountered them, for they were heralds of desolation, of a terror that defied description. These twisted abominations roamed the now darkened earth. They emerged from the ground in a grotesque, nightmarish display, their clawed hands breaking through the soil, clawing their way up from the new-formed cracks that splintered the surface, the very earth that they had tainted. Their mangled limbs and pallid, rotting flesh breaking through the soil. The people of the city began to transform into these abominations. Their bodies contorted and twisted, bones snapping and flesh tearing as they were devoured from within. Their screams of agony echoing through the air. The streets, once paved with hopes and dreams, were now marooned in a sea of blood. The remnants of the living and the deceased. The anguished wails haunted the dark city streets. The human race was being written off. As the chairman watched in utter terror, he realized that these creatures were hell's rejected abominations of a new manifestation of Mother Nature's ultimate darkness that had been festering and growing inside her womb, waiting, just waiting, until she was ready. This was her gift, ultimately birthing a new goddamn species and trading out mankind for demonkind. More than just her bastard children, they were her instruments of suffering, her tormentors of the living. Humanity had become the plaything to these outer-worldly sons of bitches, trapped in a never-ending nightmare of agony and despair. In the blanket of darkness, the chairman accepted his unfortunate end. That was the only path he believed remained by any means of escape. He prepared for the same wretched transformation, the only way he knew how. His fate, he knew, had been sealed, signed, and delivered. Amidst the jarring, erratic flickers of light, the chairman braced himself for the impending wretched transformation, inevitable descent into a harrowing abyss of the damned. The dim flickering light, exposing a trembling hand. He extracted the lower half of the desk drawer, its rusty tracks screeching in protest. Unveiling a flask and a shattered frame that lay next to it. Beside the neglected half-empty flask, he uncovered the cracked frame. Within that fractured frame lay a haunting relic of happier times, a shattered window to the past. A photograph depicted him once radiant, frozen in eternal bliss. Him beaming with his beloved wife and cherubic children. In a final, anguished glance, he raised the image to his gaze, a bitter smile on his lips as he raised it one final time, as if grasping and drowning in the fading light of those distant smiles. A last bittersweet farewell. With tears glistening in his eyes, he clutched the frame to his chest, as if clinging to the remnants of his dwindling humanity. the weight of his grief pressing heavily upon his heart. His trembling hand plunged deeper into the drawer, bypassing the half-empty bottle to reveal the chilling steel embrace of a 9mm pistol. His fingers tightened around the cold, icy handle, and with unwavering determination and a merciless grip, a shiver coursing through his clammy palm as he pressed the icy, frigid muscle to his unyielding, sweat-soaked temple. The weight of his despair closing in around him in a final, desperate act of his resignation. In the erratic dance of the flickering light, the chairman steeled himself with his eyes tightly shut. He summoned the last vestiges of courage to utter his farewell. He whispered, "Daddy will see you all soon, my loves. I'll see you soon, my love." He gulped. A guttural gulp betrayed the gravity of his choice. The cavernous room echoed with the impending calamity as the deafening and thunderous gunshot ripped and tore through the fragile, flickering tableau of his existence, forever to be pierced, forever to be shattered. His lifeless body dangled, finally unburdened from the relentless weight of his anguish, finally free from the weight of his torment. The splintered, dingy wooden frame of his family still clenched to his lifeless hand. Amidst the chaos and despair on Earth, in the deepest reaches of space, a small group of astronauts aboard a distant space station, isolated from the horrors of the damned below, with no knowledge of the catastrophe that had befallen Earth, they prepared to make their journey back home, even though they remained blissfully unaware of the unfolding nightmare. Questions still lingering and dancing in the minds within all of them as to why they had lost connection with Earth. But they remained steadfast and focused on their mission far from home. The astronauts knew, being cut from any communication and without guidance, that they faced an ever so daunting challenge as they navigated back to the surface on their own, and all alone. As they re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, they were met with a scene of devastation they couldn't have ever imagined. The world had changed beyond recognition. The astronauts' descent into Earth was a descent into the very black heart of Terra itself. As their ship broke through the ominous, thick and suffocating dark clouds, the astronauts were thrust into a nightmare scene that greeted them to an abomination of hell itself. The crew's communication systems echoed with frantic, terrified voices. Each astronaut trying to process the chaotic and surreal nightmare unfolding before their disbelieving eyes. The Earth, once a cradle of life, had undergone a sinister transformation. No longer a cradle of life. Now, a cradle of death and despair. The once familiar landscapes had been contorted beyond recognition, as if the very essence of the planet had been consumed by darkness. The sky above was a suffocating abyss, painted in the four bonding shades of crimson and inky black, with an otherworldly glow casting unsettling shadows upon the grotesque terrain below. The land itself was a nightmarish spectacle, with jagged, twisted rock formations jutting out like skeletal fingers, and rivers of melted blood-red liquid flowing through surreal canyons. On this desolate, sinister canvas, the abomination of Mother Nature, the ones that she birthed out of her ass and claimed as her new race of suffering, scoured the monstrous terrain, synchronized in a horrifying ballet of violence and destruction. The astronauts found themselves in the midst of an apocalyptic nightmare. They were now confronted with the shocking reality that the Earth that they were returning to was a far cry from the one they had left behind.